Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and today we have a preview of Grand Tourney. Well, hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. It's Professor Meg here, and today we have a preview of Grand Tourney, a Soulshards game. Thank you to Grinning Demon Games for sponsoring this video, and the campaign link is down below. It is now live, so you can check out everything that they have planned. And with that, this is a prototype copy in front of me, and a lot of this is subject to change. There's even a special note from them that a lot of the art and things like that are still being upgraded and planned to be a bit better. So definitely check out their page to see everything that they have planned for the campaign. But this is going to give you a great feel of how the game plays and what you're going to be doing throughout the game. Now in Grand Tourney, players are going to be playing against each other, where you're all playing in this majestic tournament that is a bit RPG based, where you're going to be making different skill checks, but the thing that's very unique is you're going to be able to prepare for it. So you're going to use worker placement first over the course of 14 days, or 2 weeks if you count by sevens, but after that you are going to have the 14 different days to do all of your worker placement, upgrade as much as possible, get strong, get prepared for that grand battle, because after that players are going to battle off with each other to see who becomes the grand victor. Now, as I said, the game itself is broken up into 2 different phases. You have your round tracker up here, but you are tracking through 14 different days of worker placement on this main board, where you are going to be getting stronger and stronger and preparing for the tournament. And then after that, after the 14 days, players will enter into a tournament to see who will become the victor. So to do so, you'll be placing down in these different zones, which I'm going to go over now, because that's where you're really going to be building up your character to get them able to defeat other players. Now, really quickly before we jump into the different zones, we're going to look at our player board here. So we have Steve, he's our human, and he currently has 16 grit, which means that is his health, and that is what he needs to stay alive. If he's ever reduced to 0, if it's during the 14 days, he will go over to the inn, but if it's during the tournament, he will lose. Now, you also have your player dice, you have your player action tokens, but looking at your other stats, you also have your fame, which the better that you get at doing things, you are going to get more and more famous, meaning that you'll be able to perhaps have a bit of luck on your side. And then you also have souls, which is going to be your currency, and all players start off with 6 souls at the beginning of the game, but after that you'll be able to spend them on various things. Now, I bring that up because our first worker placement area here at City Hall, you would take your character token, or in the future you also have mercenaries that you are able to place. We'll get into all of that when we get to the specific area for it, but you would take your character pawn and place it into the zone that you would want to go in player order, and then all of the zones will resolve. So, in the City Hall up here, you will roll for your wit. So, looking at Steve, he has 2 wit stats, and your base would be 6, meaning that he is currently an 8. So we would have to roll for that. And for this, it's going to determine how many dice we are rolling for this stat. So because we have 2 levels in wit, we are going to roll 2 dice. And depending on the results, different things are going to happen. So we got a 1 and a 10, pretty opposite results. So for each 6, we are able to position a card from any deck. We'll get into exactly what that means in a second. But if I had gotten a 12 or higher, I would be able to gain a fame as well. So unfortunately for us, even though we did get a 10, this is only 1 success, because that is our 6 or higher, meaning we can position 1 card. Now, positioning a card is one of 2 things. These guilds, as well as the armory, the arena, and the tavern, are going to have different decks where you're going to be able to interact with the cards. So for example, if we wanted to, now that we have that 1 success, in the Guild Hall of Finesse, which is going to help you with different finesse type things with that skill stat, then I would be able to take the top card, look at it, and discard it or position it here in the market. Or I would be able to take a card here in the market and place it to the discard. So here we have Trip Up, and I'll choose to put it into the market. It has a 10 priority when you're casting this spell, and it deals 2 damage, and it will cause for 2 rounds 2 different types of abilities. So it would be afflictions on the other player. We'll get into exactly what casting spells and what they do all in a minute, because we are just going through the zones, but that's basically how this card would become available here in this area. Now next up is the quest board, and the quest board is where you're going to be able to gain income. So again, you will be testing different skills. So initially when a character goes there, they will gain 2 souls right off the bat. If you place a mercenary there, they would not get the initial souls, but when you place your character here, you will get 2 souls, and then you will roll. So you can test any skill, and our character Steve here is pretty balanced in everything, so we're only rolling 2 dice, but we would be able to roll both of those, and for each 6 or higher, we would gain a soul, and for each 12 or higher, we would gain 2 souls. So in this example, again, we rolled a 1, but we did roll a 7, so we would be able to gain 1 soul for that, as well as the 2 because we are a character. Now, we are having this one character go through all the different zones to show you the different actions. Again, normally you would go in player order where each day would be a worker placement, and you would place all of your mercenaries first, then your characters, and then they would be retrieved before the next day. So you wouldn't be able to go from one place to another with the same character. I'm just doing that for the sake of the example to show you where each spot is on the board. Now, the trainer is where you're going to go to make your skills better. So for Steve here, where again I said all of his skills are pretty balanced, we may want him to have a better finesse. So if we wanted to test for that, then we would roll for the finesse skill, and we would have to roll 4 times the tier, and on a success, we would pay souls equal to that tier to be able to gain an additional level. So in the final game, there will be drop-ins on this board where you will be able to mark gaining the different levels, but that's how you will actually get stronger in these abilities to be able to use them in the future and have a better chance of rolling a success because you're rolling more dice. Now after that is our 3 different guild halls, and the guild halls are going to have 3 different decks that all provide the same thing. They're going to be either spells or ongoing abilities, but they're all going to be very unique and catered to the different guilds that they represent. So we have the Guild Hall of Might, Finesse, and Wit is going to be used for spell casting, but also for maneuvering out of situations. Finesse, as you can guess, is going to be for speed, and Might is going to be for attacking, but it's also going to have additional things that will happen. We're going to go through a few of these cards just to explain a little bit of what I mean. So, for example, if we did go here at Guild Hall of Might, then we would be able to first position up to 2 cards. So again, if there were some here, we could choose to discard them, but we're also able to choose to put some here into the market row, which I'm just going to do for the sake of the example. Here you can see an ongoing card versus a spell and what the difference would look like. But now that you do that, this player is going to be able to test that skill. So for Steve, again, we are rolling 2 dice, and we're going to see what happens here. Now we got a 2 and an 8, which isn't great, but isn't bad. So again, on a 6 or higher, we're going to be able to obtain one of those 2 cards. If we had gotten a 12 or higher, we would have been able to pay a soul to be able to take an additional card. So that's where it would have been a bit better. Obviously, if we had either rolled a 12 on one of them or above a 6 on both, that would have been much more helpful. But that being said, we'll be able to take a look at both of these cards. Now, I am going to go over these when we go over all of the combat. Again, I know it's a little bit of a tease, but I just think it makes so much more sense once we get into the overall combat, but this is how you're going to be acquiring these different cards from all of the guilds. So you have zones 4, 5, and 6, and they're all exactly the same, except very different depending on the different guilds that you want to visit. Now, next is the Armory, and the Armory is the only deck that starts off with some cards face up, where you're going to have a choice of different things to purchase from this area. Now, when a player does visit this spot, they have to be able to afford the thing that they want to purchase, but they would be able to buy any number of gear in this zone by paying the soul costs. So as long as you had enough money to pay for the different things that you want to use, you are able to purchase them. Now, there is armor in the game where you do have to choose which armor you are going into battle with when you battle, but you are able to swap it out between battles. And again, just to clarify, there is the final battle, but you can fight in between. So fights will be caused by the different monsters that are coming out, so there will be some fighting in the initial 14 days that's going to actually make you more powerful and a bit more famous, but there's also the final battle at the end of the game. Now looking here, I'm just going to have us purchase this unicorn blade, and honestly, I should have had us just take this and then we'll go over what it means when we get there, but we'll take both of these cards. And to get this, we're going to have to pay the 6 souls, so we will put that down there, and now we have a unicorn blade as well, and that is what the armory would do. Now at the end of the round this will cycle, so keep that in mind, but that's how you have a fresh thing of things to choose from every single round. Now, the next area is up here in the arena, and the arena is where you'll be fighting, which is the thing that we're going to talk about last, so we're just going to push it off a little bit longer. But the arena is where you would be able to, if you were placed there, view all of the face-down monsters and then choose to fight one. The monsters vary in difficulty, and that also means that they vary in rewards, but this is where you would be choosing to fight the different monsters, and then you would also gain 2 souls for doing so. Now, next we have the tavern. And the tavern is where you're going to be finding your different mercenaries and hiring them. So you are able to, again, position 2 cards into this area. And then after that, you would have to pay soul to be able to hire these different mercenaries. Now, they will cost you 2 souls, but to be able to obtain a mercenary, for example, if we paid our 2 souls here to take our friend Enlig, we'll pay the 1, 2. You have your area down here for your different mercenaries, and it's going to be additional worker placement for you, but to be able to have them, you need a certain amount of fame unlocked. So for example, to gain your first, you need at least 3 fame. So we wouldn't be able to accomplish this with Steve until we had at least that 3 fame to do so. Now when you do, you have your mercenary placed here, and then we would go and grab their different pawn, and then you would put this into your player color, and now you have an additional mercenary that you're going to be able to place around on the board as a worker in the future. Now, before we get over to fighting, which I know we are all so excited to talk about, we're going to go over to the inn. The inn is the 10th zone that you can visit, and that is just going to be where you rest. So you're able to heal up all of your grit to full, and you're also able to gain 1 fame because you have fans there and they want to say hi while you're resting up and perhaps drinking and reveling about your different adventures. So when you do so, you would go all the way up to max grit, but you would also gain an additional fame. And now all of this, everything that you're doing is all culminating in the different battles that you'll be having. So the final battle, as I've been saying this whole time, it's the Grand Tourney. It's what's most important, but there's other fighting along the way. So when you're fighting, all players are going to have a deck of 6 cards available. And from those 6 cards, at the beginning of each round of combat, you're going to choose 2 that you're going to use. So these cards are going to kind of determine what actions you're going to be taking, and it's also going to determine your priority. So there's also a priority tracker here, and you'll be using your different player markers to place on here to show when your different things will be triggering. That way it will trigger completely in order depending on all of the action cards used. That might sound a little bit confusing, but for example, if I have here a 10 and a 12, the 12 will go before the 10, and if a player has an 11 in between, they'll take an action in between both of mine. Alright, and now we are going to go over those 6 different cards that all players have available to them when fighting and choosing your different actions during the action selection phase. So when you are doing so, you would be looking at these 6 different cards and picking what you want to do. So first we'll take a look at lore. Now this lore card is a 10 priority, meaning that when all cards are revealed, you would take your action marker here and put it over at the 10 to show that you have an action triggering at that time. And this is when you would be able to cause someone's card to have no effect this round. So you could cause either another player's gear, ongoing card, mercenary, or monster cards that they've claimed, or the different monsters that you will be fighting also have breakable effects, which we'll go over the anatomy of this card in a bit, but these breakable effects you are able to ignore for that round as well. So that's something that you would do with lore, but on top of that, there is also balance. Balance is a 12 priority card, so you would place your marker here on the 12 when you would be playing this one, and this is gain +1 on rolls, and your actions gain +2 priority this round. If facing a monster, choose its attack to target this round. So you would be able to play this along with lore to make lore a bit faster if that's something that you wanted to do for that round. Now that's just showing you how the 2 different priorities will interact, because I'm going to go over all the other cards next, but that is something that you would be able to do. Now, to go over how you would be attacking, you have your primary card. For this, you would be able to use any spell, gear, or defense card, and when you are doing so, you are able to use the cards that you have accumulated throughout the game. So for example, if you had accumulated Trip Up, which is one of the spells, this is how you would trigger using that spell, and this would be a 10 priority. But for example, if you had Throw Stone, this is only a 5 priority, and that would be determined by the card that you are choosing to play. Now there's also secondary, which comes after primary, and this is where you are able to take the priority token or use any 1 shield. So that's something else that you are able to do. And then we also have defend. Now with defend, you are able to gain immune to different afflictions that you will be getting throughout the round, and you are able to use an additional card that is a non-basic attack or shield. Now to go over those, I'll show you that after the final card. But there are 4 different ailments that will affect you throughout the game, so defend is very smart to make sure that those aren't hurting you. However, you do have to pick which one during that round. It doesn't protect you from all of them, so it can be a bit tricky. Finally is focus, and focus is, after hand cards are discarded this round, return your discarded hands to your card, meaning that during combat you have all of these cards available to you, but as you start playing them, you do not gain them back until you take your turn to focus. Now again, focus would only be one of your 2 different actions, so you are able to do different things, but those are the 6 core actions that you'll be taking throughout the game, but you'll be using all of the different cards that you gain to be able to augment all of these things that you are doing. Now, to go over the different ailments here, you have different things that will happen to you as well. So for burning, you will suffer an injury. However, for dazzle, you would get a -1 on your rolls, meaning that if you rolled a 7, it would now be a 6. Now there's also slow, which will reduce your priority on you, and there's also weaken, which will do -1 damage. So those are all different ways for you to be getting a bit worse as your opponents start throwing these different things at you, as well as the monsters throwing them at you as well. Alright, so now I'm just going to have both of these players go through a sample round of combat where we're going to have Steve attack Sori, just so you can see exactly how this will happen. These cards, normally your mercenaries would be right here, so these are just kind of next to him, but not necessarily in those slots. But we're going to have Steve do 1 attack against Sori, so you can see exactly how that would happen, because you're going to be using your different statistics, and that's going to be what you use to determine how many die you are rolling for those different skills. So for Steve, we're going to have him use his Unicorn Blade. To be able to use our Unicorn Blade, we would have to play our primary card, because that's how we would play our gear. And I think that we are going to also have him use balance, which would allow it to be a bit faster and +1 on the rolls. So it's going to make the rolls stronger, but it's not necessarily going to do additional damage. And one final thing to note is there is something called accuracy. If we roll at least a 9 or higher, we will be able to do an additional damage. So let's say we are playing both of these cards along with our Unicorn Blade, which is going to deal 6 damage, hopefully. Now, when these are played, for our primary attack, we would have this at a 6 and this at a 12, but again, Sori would also be placing cards as well, but we're just going to go through with this attack. So, to be able to use our Unicorn Blade, we are going to look here, and it's going to be both strength for both of us. So we are first going to roll as the attacker, and we are currently rolling 2 dice. So we are going to take our 2, and we're going to roll them, and ooh, we got an 11, which would be 2 damage, and a 4, which would be a miss. Because what we need to do is roll against their defense, which would be a 3. Now, since that's tier 3, you can see with the chart here that it would be a 9, meaning we need at least a 9 to be able to do damage, but because we did do the 11, we would be assessing 2 damage toward Sori. Now, players are also able to have something called block, where you're able to block some damage, but if we were not able to do so, then Sori would be taking the damage, moving his grit down, and the battle phase would continue with everyone going back and forth, selecting their different cards, and finally using a focus when they want to retrieve them back to be able to use them for other things. Now, taking a look at some of the spells that we have here, just to show you how different things would be rolled. If this spell Trip Up was cast, then you would be rolling against 2 different things. So if Steve was the one rolling it, then he would need to roll 2 dice for wit, but we would be rolling against the agility of the other player. Now that's a horrible roll anyway, but their agility is an 8, meaning we would need at least an 8 for this to be able to come into effect. So your own skills are determining how many dice you are rolling, but the opponent's skills are the ones determining how much defense they have. Now that you know a bit more about how combat will work, I am going to have us go over the arena. So when you are in the, where'd we go? Here we go. When you are in the arena and you take this action, you're able to look at these all face down. So you don't need to let everyone else see what they are, but for the sake of this preview, I'm now going to flip them all face up. So again, they wouldn't normally be left face up, only the one that the player chooses to fight would become face up. But that being said, we're going to flip them all over just for us to be able to see. So we have in front of us a winged serpent, a shining butterfly, a minotaur, and an earth-fused ox. And you can see that they get a bit stronger where we have 1, 2, 3, and 5. So our strongest ones are still here in the deck. But that being said, let's take a look at our shining butterfly. Now, when you face off against a monster, you're going to grab their monster card, and it's going to have everything that you need to play with them on it. Now, they're going to be rolling dice to determine their different actions, and at the beginning of the round, you are able to forgo your accuracy to be able to see if you can find out what action they will be taking. So they'll be rolling a d12 to determine their action, and normally you would choose your actions before knowing what they would do, but there is a bit of a way to find out what's happening first. Now here we have their grit on the side, so this butterfly goes up to 12 grit, and here's that breakable ability that I said you would be able to ignore when you lure, and this one is increase each character's accuracy difficulty by 2. So that means it makes it even harder to be able to do additional damage to this butterfly, and also has +1 defense. Now here you can see the different stats that this has, meaning that it's super fast. You need to roll at least 10s to be able to attack it with this particular stat. But that being said, let's take a look at the different actions that it'll take. So we're going to roll for it and have it take an action against us. This is a 9. On a 9 or 10, and they have regeneration, which means they're going to heal 6, and that's at priority 3. That being at priority 3 is pretty good for them because they might not be that hurt, but they'll be healing later at the end of the round, so that may be able to help them heal after you've chosen to attack them. Now here we'll go again, and with a 7, they're going to be casting a spell called Mind Break. Deal 3 damage and cause 4 rounds of Dazzle. Now this is a 5 priority, and again, this is wit for both. So it's going to be rolling its wit stat, which is 2 dice, and then players are going to be using the defense of their skill for their wit. Now, when a monster is defeated, whoever defeats them and does the final blow is also able to claim their card. So this one is going to give you an ability in the future, which is gain +2 on 2 different rolls that you will be using in your different action cards, such as lore, and then after rolling 12 or higher for a zone effect, gain 1 fame. So it's something that you'll be able to use to make you even better throughout the game, and all of these different monsters will be able to come out for players to try to fight off and claim. Now, just to give you an idea of the monsters, here we have just a whole bunch of them. You have your unicorn, your winged serpent, your wyvern, a boar. They're all very just fantasy-esque and very fun to interact with. You have your rat swarm, a sharp claw cat, all the way up to a phoenix. So I just wanted to show some of these off because I think this is a pretty cool aspect of the game, all of the different monsters that you will be encountering within the different arena on top of trying to fight off against other players. Now, also, I'll show you over here some of the mercenaries that you are able to claim because there is a different pawn for each of them. So you are able to gain these different people to your teams as well, again up to 3 because you only have 3 slots. However, you are able to cycle them through if you decide you want someone that comes out. But here we just have the different mercenaries that you are able to gain to your team to make you stronger and stronger, and also make it feel like a unique team every time, because depending on the game that you play and what cards come out, the replayability is going to change throughout every game depending on how both you build out your characters, which characters you choose, and what comes out within the different guilds and your different mercenaries that join your team. Now, we've gone over the majority of the game, but over the course of those 14 days, as I said, this board will reset where you recall your different characters, you get your mercenaries back, the armory will shift over and change, but the monsters will also kind of sneak out and attack different zones. So in this in-between phase, the monsters that are face up are going to get released out to the different zones, and players are going to have an opportunity to attack them and also gain those abilities in that in-between phase. So not only are you potentially revealing some in that area, but you are then fighting them later when they come out to attack you, especially if they beat you in the battle, because if they do win, they still stay in play, and then you have to fight them off. Now, the general pace of play of the game is going to be a little bit calming at first, where you're starting off with only 1 action per round, and you're using that to build up your strength. This is a bit of an RPG feel where you're going to have your different skills that you're trying to get stronger in, your different items that you're trying to acquire, and you're going to get more and more actions as you build out your team of mercenaries. But all of it is going to start feeling the pressure of culminating when you get closer and closer to the end of those 14 days, because you are going to have that final battle. Now, if you have 2 players, they just battle off against each other. If you have 4 players, then you have 2 play off against each other, and then the winner of each of those will play against each other in a final battle. And if you have a 3-player player game, there's a little bit of a different rule where one of the players will fight off against a monster first, and then whoever wins from each of those will fight off and then determine the winner. So this really is a tournament style where you're going to be playing together in this shared world, going through all of the different days, training together and seeing how strong your friends are becoming. But then after that, you're going to go into something that really feels like a tournament style, where you're watching these different epic battles happen, and then you're going to see who is left standing at the end of the day with just a little bit more health than everybody else and a whole lot of fame and glory. This has been Soulshards, a Grand Tourney. I'm Professor Meg. Thank you all for watching the Board Game Code channel, and you can check out the link down below for everything that they have for their campaign. I'll see you all next time. Bye.